how more meaningfully better do you guys feel at this stage now that you've gotten through the deadline?
Oh, I think we're notably better. And generally speaking, we went into the deadline. We were not shy about expressing that we wanted to see if we could upgrade at the corner infields for the stretch run. We wanted to add to our bullpen. We were able to do those things, and I obviously we feel like we acquired the two best bats available, and it's the comfort of acquiring people who've played in this ballpark, and in Gino's case, someone who's been pivotal to our clubhouse culture before is. When I called him last night, I almost cried, and it was a bit, which I did the last time I talked to him about trades. But he's a special guy, and thrilled that he's back. It's amazing. He seems very happy, and and getting Josh Naylor and his intensity, it's like a perfect balance. And the left, right, and what it does in the middle of our order, and now if you line up our batting lineup, it's pretty stunning. Where we were and where we are in terms of the depth of our lineup, and super excited about that. And adding Caleb Ferguson, I think outside of Justin, myself, and the guys upstairs, the obvious winner is Gabe Spire because now he has a little bit of a partner who can help him out with the workload. But we felt like we did the things we wanted to do.
Jerry, you've been able to execute some trades the past few years at this time of year. What was different this year about both the mindset and your ability maybe to execute some of these trades?
I won't say that the mindset was grossly different, I don't, obviously we're in a playoff position right now. It is a tight race. I don't think that we are giving up on the notion of winning the American Midwest, and it's obviously the Astros and Rangers felt pretty strongly about the chances of being in a race as well because they made moves, and we've been pretty active the last handful of years at deadline time, and if you just qualify our deadline starting in 22 with adding the Rock and adding Randy, we JT, Yimi Garcia was a big add when we made the addition. It didn't work out the way we'd hoped. Sneaky in there in 23 was Dom Canzone, maybe controversial, but it's paying off right now. And obviously this one we went a little bigger, and it was players who are free agents at year's end, which is a little unique for us. But we felt like this team deserved the opportunity to just go out and see if we can win the World Series. This is we feel like we have as good a lineup as there is in our league. Our rotation, if the guys do the things that they do, is proven that they can be as good as anybody in this league. And the guys at the back of that bullpen are really good if we give them the opportunity to get a little bit of rest in between. So hopefully we hit on all cylinders moving forward.
Jerry, how would you characterize this deadline, what we've seen particularly in the last week up until even an hour ago?
Really boring until today. I felt like for the most part we were carrying it, which is not unusual. And then, today we tried a ton of things that didn't really work out for us, but super busy day today. I was fascinated with what was happening with relievers around the league. We were in a lot of those conversations for weeks now on the back end bullpen guys, and felt like we were in the end zone in one case and near the goal line in some others. But really active deadline. I thought it was shockingly mild on starting pitchers changing address, but the bullpen and the returns for bullpen, I think this was about as aggressive as teams have been with their farm systems in quite some time, us included. So.
Do you think there's anything that you wish you had done for this trade deadline, or anything you think that you have missed, specifically regarding starting pitching, but also about some of the bullpen players you might not have acquired that you wanted to?
Yeah, we were pretty, I guess, loosely tethered to the starting pitcher market, mostly because there weren't that many available, and we didn't feel like there was an obvious upgrade for us with the idea of Logan Evans and Emerson Hancock and the ultimate return of Bryce Miller, whenever that is. We felt like we were in better shape than most. We really focused on the bullpen, and would we have liked to add one more guy? Sure. That's why we were in the market. We came up a little bit short.
Jerry, you mentioned going a little bit bigger this year relative to previous seasons. I'm curious, you mentioned this team kind of proved it to you, but what prompted that change in philosophy? Why now versus other previous years where you were competitive in the hunt, things like that?
Mostly Justin told me to. I think we've spent a good deal of this, mostly the whole season, either in first place or in a playoff position. But I think Cal's having an MVP type of season. We just had 5 All-Stars. We have a really deep team. I think if you talk to other clubs in the league, they're pretty, bullish on what we're capable of when we're hitting on all cylinders. And while we had a hot streak early in the season, we really haven't hit our next hot streak. And it's coming. And I believe that adding to this team, adding some energy to the room, and just showing the guys that we believe in what we're doing was important. And I think the response has been great.
Jerry, I'm sure you had belief in the guys that you moved out and such over this deadline period, but to hold on to your 8 top 100 prospects out of this deadline too, and still be able to get Gino and Naylor and Ferguson out of that, how do you feel about that side of things with the eye on the future still being there while adding the pieces you did right now?
We'll always have, I guess 1 foot in the present, 1 foot in the future type of mentality, but, we might have been standing more heavily on the left foot in this case, and that's what happens when you're down to 50 games. Thrilled that we still have, the group of high-impact players at the minor league level. We didn't really touch the top end of our system, and for the most part, that's intentional. We also didn't feel like that our needs, merited us getting into that group if we were able to address our needs outside of it. And like I said, in our minds, we acquired the 2 best bats on the market. And, we were ideally focused on bullpen in general, but we did want another lefty. And we thought Caleb Ferguson was as good as anybody available.
Jerry, what can you share about how the Gino deal came together last night?
I'd be remiss. Justin did a ton of work on, both Gino and Josh Naylor worked with Amiel Sade with the Diamondbacks behind the scenes, and he's tireless. I look tired. He seems energized. But it came together. We had been talking to them for weeks, and when I say weeks, it's probably closer to months, about the concept of acquiring both Josh and Gino together. They wisely broke the 2 apart, and I think they did better by doing that. And we knew we were going to be the team that was ultimately likely to do better for them. They were number 1 and 2 on our list, or 1 and 1A, and we were able to reel them both in. And I wouldn't say it came together quickly. This was a long process, and one we just never put down the phone on. And I give Justin a ton of credit for the grind that he went through to bring it in, and I think we got better because of it.
Had Locklear specifically been in the negotiations for some time?
No, he actually wasn't introduced until 48 hours ago, or thereabouts.
Can you walk us back to the trade of Gino to Arizona? You mentioned the emotion in it for you. Just what was the motivation? What was the thinking at the time? Why then?
At the time, we were trying to manage, maybe a more restrictive payroll as we went into that off season. And what we didn't know the day we traded Gino to Arizona was that we were later going to be able to make a deal with the Braves that kind of answered our needs. And if we'd have known that we had that deal in our back pocket, we might have done something different, in the November deal that sent Gino to Arizona. I told him that day, and I think he'll verify it being true. One of my least favorite trades we ever did. I love Gino. We all do. He's a pivotal player for us for 2 years, and better person, leader. And, he was on a contract that was pretty affordable for what he did. But, you make decisions based on where you are. And, if we could have called and asked for a redo after the winter meetings and when we put the deal together with Atlanta, that would have been great. But that's not how it works.
With Naylor and Gino, those deals being separated, what kind of went into that Naylor being done first? Was that just the one you guys were able to get across the finish line quicker, or what was that process like?
Yeah, that was up to the Diamondbacks. They chose to push Naylor first, and we just went with them. So once we hung up, we just continued to stay in touch on Gino and don't forget about us, and fortunately they didn't.
What's the message for Ben Williamson coming out of this? Because he's been a pretty pivotal piece for you here over the last stretch, obviously, and didn't do anything wrong and goes down to Tacoma out of this. So, what do you kind of say to him in a moment like this?
I really wouldn't say anything negative. Ben Williamson's a wonderful guy. He did a great job for us. Honestly, he did exactly what we could have hoped he would do, which is, find ways to grind and contribute at the bottom of the order and play great defense. And I know he'll continue to do that. We hopefully are able to kind of pick back up in his offensive development. And he went very quickly from William and Mary to the big leagues, largely because we had a gross need due to injury, and he stepped in and handled himself wonderfully well. But we've got 50 games left, and we had a chance to go acquire the guy leading the National League in RBI, who's been arguably the most impactful offensive player at his position in the big leagues for the last calendar year. So we did it.
Jerry, kind of building on that, what do you see now that the dust has settled, the roles for Dylan and Solano moving forward?
A lot of that's going to be up to Dan, but this is probably, the most static our team has been all year is, you have a first baseman, you have a third baseman. We've been weaving together platoons for a lot of the year. I think Polo's done a remarkable job at DH. Now he's, I guess, healthy enough to go play defense. So stepping in and playing second base versus lefties is an advantage for us. We love the progress that Cole is making. Really since the end of his first week as a big leaguer, he's been pretty awesome and quietly. It's the guys who man the bench will continue to man the bench, and finding opportunity for them. They've spent their careers as role players, and I think they will continue to play a role on this team.
What were the kind of the thought process behind keeping Dylan Moore and Solano in the big league roster and sending down Williamson and making those specific decisions?
We don't want Ben to sit and watch other people play. There's Gino's your third baseman now, and that's likely, barring injury, to be the case through what we hope is the end of the World Series. He's not a guy that generally takes too many days off. He's not a guy that you replace. He's not a guy you pinch hit for. He's going to hit the middle of your lineup, and we didn't want Ben to sit as a caddy and watch somebody else play when he can probably go get a couple of 100 plate appearances and play quite a bit if we allow him to do that in Tacoma.
You referenced it a little bit earlier, but now that the dust has settled on the day, you look around the American League. What is your reaction?
I haven't really had a chance to look around the American League. My reaction is I'm glad we're done playing the Yankees because their bullpen is pretty ridiculous. I look and say, boy, a lot of teams tore down in ways that were pretty massive. And this I will say, and the Yankees are representative of the activity you saw in the American League West. The American League is wide open, and I think the behavior of the teams in the league showed you, who thinks they have a shot, and we're among them.
Do you think the added playoff spot in the last few years has increased the amount of teams that are looking for this competitive spot?
Sure. It makes it later. It makes the process a little bit later. But for as long as I've been in baseball, everybody wants to be in this position in July, and when you are, teams behave aggressively, and I think that's. For the last 4 years, that's been us, and we want to do it again.
What's the benefit of being the first team to kind of make the big move and then put other teams, especially in the division, in the position of reacting?
So generally for us, we think having the player for the extra week or 10 days is pretty important. And we also don't mind setting the bar. We have a bit of a reputation in the league for people know that when we say this is what we'll do that thing, and we're generally, we'll try to get it done for less than that. But if we can make a deal happen, then we're more aggressive on the front end. And we don't mind setting the bar for the rest of the league during the deadline. And I will say we tried to do that with some high-end relievers, and we were roughly laughed off the mark. And when I saw what they were going for, I thought, oh, they were right. But we are aggressive by nature in the market. I think the league, when we say this is what we'll do, they know that's about as far as we're going to go. And I think after vetting the other teams who might be interested in, say, a Josh Naylor or a Gino, and you find that they're below our line, we found the Diamondbacks just jumped, and because they had Josh, they had Gino, they had Merrill Kelly, they had Randall Grichuk, they had other players that were ultimately going to be on the move. At some point, you have to move someone and allow yourself enough time to logically think through moves. And we've always done business well with the Diamondbacks. Like, we have a good relationships there, and it kind of paid off again.
Gino mentioned that looking at this lineup, it's one of the best in the American League on paper. From your vantage point, how do you view this lineup compared to past years post-deadline?
This is the best lineup we've had since I've been here without question. And it's when you look up on a given night, you've got Polo hitting 7th, who's rocking something near an 800 OPS for the most part, and on a 25 homer pace or thereabouts. Dom Canzone and his who I think has been legitimately good since the day we brought him back from Tacoma, hitting down at the bottom of your order. Cole Young, who I think is among the top 10 hitters at his position since the end of his first week in the big leagues. That's a good bottom of your lineup, and we can left, right, in the middle. You've got switch hitters. There's balance. We have speed. I think right now we're the only team, and this is without adding Gino to the mix until today. We were the only team in the American League to be in the top 3 in the league in WRC plus home runs and stolen bases. We have a lot of offensive talent, and the fact that we've played kind of win 1, lose 1, win 2, lose 2 for a while now, I don't think is reflective of our talent. We have to get some traction, and hopefully, like I said earlier, this stokes the fire and gets us rolling in the right direction.
What's the key to finding that traction and that consistency?
Hopefully Gino. I told him last night, we need your energy. It's we had, I guess, the misfortune in the schedule of playing 17 in a row leading into the break and then 17 in a row out of the break. And anybody who's been around the game for any length of time will tell you those are really tough stretches to get through, and we're taking on some wind, and hopefully this gives you that second breath of fresh air. We're going into a big series with the team we're tied with right now, and we know them and they know us, and I think the energy with both sides, just having added players, is going to make it even better. And having this be a home series with the return of Gino, and the first time our home fans will get to see Josh Naylor, and I don't want to forget about Caleb Ferguson. Like Caleb's pitched in postseasons. He's been around for a long time. He neutralizes left-hand hitters, and he's done it effectively for a number of years. So we're pretty happy with what we've done, and hopefully that energy and there are good vibes in the clubhouse, and that was always the case when Gino was last year, and it didn't take very long. And also, he smells great, so it's and I'm certain that makes the clubhouse a little bit more exciting.
Jerry, we saw Victor hit on the field yesterday in Sacramento. Do you have any update on kind of like where his timeline is right now about when you think you might be able to add him to this roster?
Yeah, Vic is. We actually were fairly active in the last 48 hours in trying to find maybe a more of an optionable right-hand hitting outfielder who might be able to take that role for a little bit, but we weren't able to drive it home. And then lo and behold, in the last 2 days, we were informed that if all goes well, Vic is the potential of him getting on our roster at some point in September, maybe more early than late, is very real. Obviously, we don't have the ability to get through any type of setback or delay. That's there's not enough time on the calendar. But right now, he's working his tail off. It's trending in the right direction. And again, another guy who brings a ton of energy to our group. And it's I can't even think of the potion that will pop out if you add Gino and Vic to the clubhouse mix. It would be absurd. I might melt down.
Yeah. Any update on Bryce?
Bryce is going to throw. I think right now he's loosely scheduled for tomorrow. I've been a little underground the last 2 days, but he's on target, and we're going to build his pitch count. It's going well so far. We don't really have a TBD on his return, but we'll build the pitch count, and as opposed to some of what we've done through his last time, this time we are just going to be a little bit more deliberate in building him up and making sure he's ready to go out there and throw a full I guess a full workload before we send him out.
Listening to Josh Naylor talk, he's so analytic and thoughtful, and really seems to love baseball in a deep way. He feels Mariner-y. Has he been a target in the past, or is he not just maybe the best bat that was on the market, but the best Mariner bat that was on the market?
So he's been a target in what seems like forever for us. Obviously Josh has changed addresses a couple of times. We have had a ton of talks with Cleveland, about Josh through the years, including this offseason. And I would say there was a time during the late push that we thought we were going to acquire him. Didn't happen. And then as it works out, ultimately we pivoted to Carlos Santana, and then later to Donovan Solano. But we were doing our best to bring him in the off season. Fell short, and the ability to grab him at this deadline is we're really looking forward to seeing him in a Mariners uniform, because it's not the first time we've dreamed of it, and I hope he likes it here. It's as I've told Cal in other instances, hey, tell a friend. It's once you've played here at this time of year, when this ballpark is full and we're in a postseason push, it's fun. And when you get there, that's how you leave a mark. And he's I think he's excited about being here. He is a really high baseball IQ guy, not just in the batter's box. He just has a great sense for the game. As I just said to him inside, I didn't really have on my bingo card impact base runner, but yeah, it appears that's also something he's got in his bag of tricks.
Yeah. You mentioned Cal there in his comments last night just about the front office and maybe being in a line with you guys and going back to conversations in spring training. Just, I don't know, how does that make you feel, and is that kind of a step forward for a guy like him having a great season, but also as a leader and a guy who's out there in front about what this organization is trying to do?
He's been there for a while, and that kind of predates MVP Cal. He's been there for a while. I think he is in tune with what we're doing, in addition to being our platinum glove catcher and kind of burgeoning team leader and potential American League MVP. He's kind of like an assistant GM as well. So he watches the league, he observes, he knows the players, he has opinions. Cal's a great baseball guy. In addition to being great at his job on the field, he sees things that a lot of guys don't, and I think he cares about the game in a big way. And he was pretty pumped. There was happy texts, and I think it's when you keep star players happy, that doesn't stink either. So.
When you say assistant GM, are you keeping him appraised of a lot of these negotiations?
I wouldn't say negotiations, but I have developed a pretty good back and forth with Cal, and I know he trusts Justin, and we will generally visit on our direction, what we're trying to do. So as we're going into the deadline, the same way I might inform you, I'll sit and talk with Cal and kind of run ideas by him, players by him, ask about how this guy might fit in the clubhouse, or things like that, which isn't out of the norm. It's something we've done for years with veteran players, and Cal's now in that category. And like I said, quality on the field, off, cares about the organization, and through the years I found out that he probably has as much care and information on the players you might be talking about, and I appreciate the fact that sometimes he'll, and other times he gets pretty excited, and I think he's pretty excited.